Arcane is arguably one of my biggest inspirations, between its creative visual storytelling and extremely amazing character building, but there has always been an underlying factor that I think inspired me most. At times, even in tragedy, the story would leave me a quite comforting essence, and I think that essence is derived from the emotionality and the realistic aspects that portray the human condition.
Humanity's self-corrupting contradiction.
I thought that the differences between Season 1 and 2 were very compelling since, to me, it still kept the grounded character structure and thematic depth that it had previously, while further elevating the story's concepts.
That which inspires us to our greatest good is also the cause of our greatest evil.
In retrospect, whether it be familial intent, a passion, or particular goal, each of the characters in Arcane are highly devoted to what they love or their ambitiousness, which can ostensibly be perceived as optimistic and gratifying. But when a necessary ethical responsibility that would bring balance to these components is lacking, the lines of right and wrong do not come into play with certain choices. Without moral restraint, these relationships, ambitions, and good intentions can spiral out of control, ultimately leading to chaos. The spinning cogwheel could be a visual symbol towards this double-edged nature. There are many instances where the characters attempt to maintain a sense of control, stability, or optimization, but human nature cannot always be predictable or constrained by particular rules, which is why the ethical lines of the good intended begin to blur and become tainted, which may cause a trajectory for people to believe that there is some justification to their actions.
Why is peace always the justification for violence?
This is showcased where Victor shortened mortality in his desire to live up to the standards necessary for his ambitions, and with Hextech, he desires to help the lives of the people in the Undercity as well, but the more he tampers with this technology, eventually trying to use it to rectify human flaws, the more harm he creates by giving the people an almost hollow state of consciousness. It's showcased with Ambessa and her desire to keep her family safe, while doing whatever it is necessary to gain the upper hand, and eventually putting her daughter Mel in more danger by doing so. Jace's vehement passion towards magic and using it to improve the world slowly becomes corrupted and used with violent purposes, and eventually corrupted notions. Smaller characters like Singed, whose hefty and shady actions follow an intrinsic love for his daughter, and Marcus, who wants to keep his daughter safe and navigates with Silco under the radar to survive and keep himself out of trouble. It's portrayed with the parallel between Silco and Powder's attempts to save their loved ones that led to destruction and contradicting harm. As Victor said, these aspects that carry out a discrepancy of emotions such as rage and compassion are merely two sides of the same coin. This aggressiveness, this desire to take action, and these destructive tendencies are derived from what is loved.
Why does anyone commit acts others deem unspeakable? For love.
And this dichotomy could also be portrayed with time. The pursuit and chase for improving the future can misguide one into past mistakes and falters, but clinging on to the past and being fearful can keep a person stagnant and reluctant to move forward, which is why I want to talk more about what the past means in Arcane.
There's no good version of me.
No matter what happened in the past, it's never too late to build something new.
There has always been reoccurring concepts of identity in Arcane, the center of this theme being Jinx, and Vi's perspective and perseverance towards Powder. The story consistently presents to us an argument as to whether Powder is still there, or if she is lost forever, with characters reminding Vi of who she is now. And though this concept of Jinx/Powder portrays the lasting effects of trauma and holding on to the past, we see this through the lens of Vi's character, since she struggles to accept that Powder has changed. Echo's character portrays a rather contrary perspective. In Season 1, he always comes to terms with the present and focuses on the events that are happening in the moment, and fully accepts Jinx for who she is now, telling Vi that Powder is unreachable. But in Season 2, having entered an alternate timeline and seeing what could have been, he realizes that all of the things he's pushed aside and lost hope of are possible, that there is always room to build anew. But how can we? How does Arcane present this? There's something that Jinx's imagination of Silco says when she's locked up, that we inherently create different walls and cells, whether it be commitments, self-doubt, oaths, and ultimately deem them as our identity and what defines us. The same could be said about things like fear, regret, acceptance, and different sentiments that could be limiters. And I believe this to be a big case for Jinx's character. The tragedy and vivid memory of her past causes her to hold the definitive concept that she puts a pin on in her identity and who she is, which can eventually lead to self-destruction. The past can have long and drastic effects to everyday life and decisions, and may cause us to manifest certain attributes that affect introspection. But as these different emotions, different sentiments, different experiences build up, the concept of forgiving, letting go, or even both altogether becomes more vivid, more clear. We can see this through Vander and Silco's dynamic, where as the story unfolds, we see Silco gain an understanding of the past and as to why Vander stopped fighting.
Is there anything so undaring as a daughter?
In the end of Season 1, he came to the decision of letting go. This aspect of love and ambition coming into conflict with each other is a parallel shared between these two characters. Vander's love and ambitions come into conflict while the Undercity attempts to make a stand against the oppression. Vander is reluctant due to the possibility of losing any more people, as he feels responsible for previous losses. It's as if these hefty decisions and devotions invariably follow a sacrificial process, a realistic portrayal that at times, love and loyalty can encounter a crossroads with ambition, or what is deemed as the greater good. This is shown with Savika in Season 2, when the Chem Barons offer to hand over Jinx to Piltover to reach a consensus, but similar to what Vander says to Grayson in Season 1, Savika says,
We don't hand over our people.
Her loyalty towards Zorn and her devotion to aid in creating a better future for it stops her from accepting the offer. These aspects of moral ambiguity are handled very well because there are dichotomies created that puts the greater good in an unfamiliar shape, thus becoming uncalibrated. Going back to the quote from the beginning, Victor comes to understand that the complications in evolving and making the world a better place is the conflicting emotions that can cause human stagnancy. At times, when one comes to this understanding and state of consciousness, they begin to alienate themselves further and further from humanity, which is what Victor does, and I personally believe that the astral plane is at times a representation of his loneliness and isolation.
Choice is false. It is how we clothe and forgive the baser instincts that spur us to division.
So often, things like fear, guilt, power, survival, or ambition are fundamental instincts that design our actions and, as said previously, how we may come to justify them. These sentiments create blockades and come into conflict with particular values, which is why Victor deems free will as merely an illusion here. He believes that in creating an amalgamation that can carry a one-track mind will be a firm rectification and answer to creating a better future, to get rid of these instincts and trade for rationality. But in doing that, it erases what makes them human. These imperfections, emotions, and even at times destruction can make way to learning how to spark something new beyond it all, to carry on through trial and error, and most prominently, to showcase our differences.
What makes you different makes you strong.
I think a general statement to take away from Arcane is that although devotion, ambitions, and our overall love may at times drag us into unknown territory and can cause a confluence of emotions and tragedy, a sense of control and stability can be found from looking beyond the past and moving onward by building something new, forgiving others and oneself, and breaking free of certain constraints such as guilt, loss, and regret, ultimately breaking the cycle.
I think the cycle only ends when you find the will to walk away.
I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to subscribe. If you'd like, you could also join my Patreon for writing content. I have one of my short story drafts from an upcoming book on there, so if you'd like to see it, feel free to join. Take care.